North of the prairie, south of the boreal forest, there is a broad territory shared by tree, grass, and marsh. An area called the Aspen Parkland. Ancient glaciers molded this parkland. And in their wake, they left rolling land, dune fields, level plains. Water, unleashed by the melting glaciers, eroded deep channels. Meltwater collected in vast basins, distant ancestors to the parkland's remnant lakes. When the ice departed, the glacial till was laid down, a jumble of scoured earth and stone. The melting of ice trapped within the mounds of till left hollows, a pattern known as hummocky moraine or knob and kettle. This landscape is domain to both grass and aspen. Between the two, a living balance, governed by cycles of rainfall and fire. Along the southern edge, the warmest and driest part of the aspen parkland, tussocky fescue grass controls the sun-washed hills. The aspen grow in the damp depressions and north-facing shade. When explorer David Thompson crossed the plain in 1798, he could see that fire was pushing the aspen back. Along the Great Plains, there are many places where large groves of aspens have been burnt, and from this cause, the Great Plains are constantly increasing in length and breadth, and the deer give way to the bison. But in a period of moister climate, in the absence of fire, the aspen groves expand. Pioneer seedlings test the present conditions for life. Each pioneer sends out suckers, from which new aspens sprout. The process repeats again and again, and the final result is a rounded clone, what the early settlers called a bluff. Each tree in the clone is the genetically identical child of the original. And so, the entire clone leafs out or turns color at the same time. Moving north, the cooler, wetter climate dictates change. The groves are larger, more continuous. The patches of grass are squeezed thin. Further north again, and the aspen forests close. Mature trees and willows lock tightly around wet meadows and lakes. And finally, the aspen parkland gives way to conifers, mixed wood, swamp. The boreal forest begins. The parkland's northern border, like its southern one, is not fixed. The blurred line between zones shifts to nature's complex rhythms: rainfall, temperature, fire. There are other places where climate and landform have combined to create aspen parklands. In the Peace River country of the north and in the far southwest. A narrow corridor of parkland tucked between the mountains and the prairie. In the southwest parkland, life within and around each bluff is distinct from that of the northern parkland, a result of its southerly location and the nearness of the mountains. And so it is in every parkland area. The mosaic of life differs according to local climate and the territory it borders. Almost 2 centuries ago, David Thompson saw and understood the relationship between life and landscape. Especially the way deer and aspen flourish together. In calm weather, a deer feeds among the pines, aspens, and willows. The buds and tender branches of the two latter are its food, but in a gale of wind, he retires among the close growth of aspens. Thompson feared that natural fire would deplete the aspen trees, that the deer population would suffer. He could not have foreseen a moisture climate, that men such as himself would control the fires and allow the aspen woodlands to spread. Fresh habitat for white-tailed deer, and in response, the species flourishes. Wherever nature provides a niche, species adapt to occupy it. The opportunism of survival. The aspen parkland has been called the duck factory of North America. To this system of glacial depressions filled by storm and snowmelt, migratory birds return each year to nest. On the largest remnant glacial lakes and in the smallest potholes, life is renewed. To complete the circle of migration, the cycle of life, the water must stand long enough for the birth and growth of the fledgling birds. Grass and shrubs on the uplands, marsh at the water's edge. These are needed to camouflage the eggs, to guard the birds from predators. If this is a factory, man controls many of the means of production. When he plows the land, floods the marsh, or drains the pond, the circle is broken. Ducks and many other species lose habitat. Their numbers decrease. Man can also create and protect a water body. Such influence carries with it a responsibility to understand, to weigh the value of change against the value of a natural order. Artist Paul Kane passed this way when painting the West in the 19th century. We had passed in our route many dried-up lakes, the basins covered with an encrustation of subcarbonate of soda, so unbroken as to give the appearance of being covered with snow. Where groundwater carries salts to the surface, the land and lakes are alkaline. Parkland still, but tree growth is restricted and salt meadows abound. A place less inviting to man, left wild by its lack of value for agriculture. Sand also limits productivity. When the glaciers departed, pouring their meltwaters into huge lake basins, vast deltas of sand were deposited. The sand has been worked into shapes by wind. Today's climate encourages vegetation, a network of roots to restrain the restless sand. The dunes become stabilized. The resilient aspen has found a way to thrive here. Widespread roots feed short, gnarled trees. Adaptation, nature's ever-changing reply to soil, climate, landform. Reflecting pools in a dimpled landscape, a pattern echoing the long-departed glaciers. A pattern crossed by ocean-seeking rivers. Explorer Captain John Palliser noticed how the valley forests often change at bends in the river, or when the valley walls steepen or flatten out. The northern exposure of the river valley, as usual, was the wooded side, containing poplar, spruce, and birch, while the side of the valley by which we approached it was almost bare of wood. A variety of conditions making each river valley not one habitat, but many. Other streams flow more slowly, meandering along broad, flat valleys, creating oxbow lakes, sedge meadows, and marsh. intricate webs of life, nourished by this abundance. Rich, varied habitats which can vanish in minutes before the blade. Except for a few areas, the soil of the parkland is dark and fertile, and much has been claimed by the plow. Man's motives have become a force almost as powerful as rainfall and the shapes of land it falls upon. Few areas of extensive parkland remain uncultivated, areas that are not as useful to man. In the north, where the forest is closed around countless wetlands. In the steep and rocky Knob and Kettle country. And along the eastern border, where aspen roots in sand. Here, man has forced no major change. In the 1930s, when the grasslands were burned to lifelessness by drought, people came north to the aspen parkland in search of green. Author R.D. Simons witnessed the exodus. Yet the hearts of all began to lighten as more and more poplar groves came into view, or perhaps a lake ringed with lush grass. The sight of ducks on the water, the sound of mud hens calling, or of pipits caroling overhead was balm that soothed the anxious thoughts and even brought a smile. Hopefully, we will not have to suffer their loss, to feel their joy, to know that what remains of this gentle wilderness is a resource of tremendous value.